Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ambient Experiences. I'm your host, Tyler Elcock, on the podcast where I talk about the weirder side of music to the listener's ears. Today we will be talking about the album, or better yet, art piece as a whole, Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker. So let's jump right in because there's a lot to unpackage here. Firstly, we'll be going into the history of the album. In 1999, Leyland Kirby, who was an English electronic musician, adopted the music alias of The Caretaker and would go on to make projects that would have a reminiscent yet uneasy ballroom tone that would affect so many people around the world. Kirby would get his music inspiration from the haunted ballroom scene in the popular film The Shining from 1980. Everywhere at the End of Time was one of Kirby's final albums, lengthening out the 6 stages of dementia through an almost 6.5-hour masterpiece that is considered Kirby's magnum opus, or best work. This would be Kirby's last album with the alias of The Caretaker, and even said himself that this album represents the death of The Caretaker as a whole. While Kirby was producing this album, he actually never planned on releasing it because of how sensitive of a topic it was, especially coming from somebody who has never had this experience or feeling before. But as the stages would be released, they would continuously get more and more good ratings from critics. He really wanted people to feel this album out, literally, so he would release this studio album over 3 years, releasing stages in 6-month periods to give the listener a sense of time passing, as it would feel if someone were slowly going through the stages of dementia itself. Recently, in the 2020s, the first song on the whole album, titled It's Just a Burning Memory, has become popular in trends and social media in memes on platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, etc. Now for the album meaning. Everywhere at the End of Time describes the feeling of someone's mental state when going through the 6 stages of dementia. This project, made up of 6 different stages, really captures the feeling of someone's mind deteriorating over a long period of time. I ended up listening to this album all the way through without stopping and would just go about my day doing everything I normally would do. One of my favorite parts about this project is how all the music is real music that exists, but it is just turned into a ballroom instrumental. For example, the first track on the first stage, which is titled It's Just a Burning Memory, is actually the song Heartaches by Al Bowley from 1931, who would then be integrated into some of The Caretaker's other works as well. The album does a fantastic job of making anyone who listens to it feel reminiscent of younger days, even though the listener has never heard any of these songs before. This album also provides an incredible sense of unease as the listener waits for the next song to start. The listener starts to listen for more signs of brain deterioration as the album continues. How the music makes me feel as a whole. This album is very heavy, and it takes a great toll on a lot of your emotions. While listening to the album, there were parts where I could recall certain songs played earlier in the album, but they oddly sounded different, making me feel like I was progressively aging, and I could really feel the functions of the brain start to shut down one by one. One of my favorite things to do with this album is listen to it and read through the comments on YouTube and see all of the people who have found this, and have actually had someone in their family go through this very rough and stressful disease. Unfortunately, The Caretaker and Kirby's music could not be found on streaming sites because Kirby himself said that he would not release them due to constant devaluing of music by big business and streaming services. Another thing that makes this album give off an eerie feeling is the artwork for each stage, as they all seem familiar yet unknown at the same time. The artwork is minimalistic oil paintings, and as the stages progress, they become more distorted and unrecognizable. The artist of the pieces is one of Kirby's closest friends, Ivan Seal. Ivan states that art is always working from memory, which is why these pieces have the opposite effects, where they become less recognizable as the album continues. Now onto the music itself. Since this album is so long, instead of describing all of the songs, since there are so many, I will be describing the stages and saying my favorite stage and song from the whole album. The stages are divided into 2 categories. Awareness, 1 through 3, and post-awareness, 4 through 6. The description for stage 1 reads, "Here we experience the first signs of memory loss. This stage is most like a beautiful daydream, the glory of an old age and recollection, the last of great days." The description for stage 2 reads, "The second stage is the self-realization and awareness that something is wrong with the refusal to accept that. More effort is made to remember so memories can be more long-form, with a little more deterioration in quality. The overall personal mood is generally lower than the first stage and at a point before confusion starts setting in." Stage 3 reads, "Here we are presented with some of the last coherent memories before confusion fully rolls in and the gray mists form and fade away. Finest moments have been remembered, the musical flow in places is more confused and tangled. As we progress, some singular memories become more disturbed, isolated, broken, and distant. These are the last embers of awareness before we enter the post-awareness stages." Stage 4 reads, "Post-awareness stage 4 is where serenity and the ability to recall singular memories gives way to confusions and horror. It's the beginning of an eventual process where all memories begin to become more fluid through entanglements, repetition, and rupture." Stage 5 reads, Post-awareness Stage 5, Confusions and Horror. More extreme tanglements, repetition, and rupture can give way to calmer moments. The unfamiliar may sound familiar. The time is often spent only in the moment, leading to isolation. And finally, Stage 6 reads, Post-awareness Stage 6 is without description. So yeah, this is definitely some pretty heavy stuff. My favorite stage is probably Stage 2. This is because you can really see how the brain is starting to decline in motor function, but not enough where it feels like it's the end of the road. My favorite song is probably the first song on the album. It's Just a Burning Memory. This is mostly because I just feel like it's so iconic and it's almost deceiving in a way. It feels like a happy memory, but little does the listener know that this is the beginning of a slow decline into a lot of people's biggest fears. Now, I know this episode has been a little hard for some to get through, but I think this album is an absolute masterpiece. As I've listened to it, I could really feel all of the passion and intelligence that went into creating this project. As always, I hope you will give it a listen because this album is one of the coolest experiences I've ever had with music. If you like this album, definitely check out The Caretaker's other projects. Tune in next time when I will be talking about The Caretakers and Empty Bliss Beyond This World, the story of someone with Alzheimer's. I'm your host, Tyler Elcock.